It's time to get your property news, tips and tricks from a different pro every week. I'm Todd Sloan.
And I'm Jack Gibson.
And you're listening to Pizza and Property.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pizza and Property. We're your host, Todd Sloan.
And I'm Jack Gibson.
Jack, we are back in the studio.
We are. It feels good.
It does. It feels
sounds better too.
It does sound a lot better. It does feel a lot separate though. You're several meters away from me right now.
Yeah, I can barely see you over there.
Yeah. Well, you don't have your glasses on? Yeah. But what's been happening, man? How you been?
Yeah, not too bad. Got a valuer coming around at some point when the lender sorts their paperwork out. I've been in a queue for a couple of weeks now. I think there's a bit of paperwork happening in the background on their end.
Absolutely.
But I'm thinking it's currently Wednesday. If I haven't heard from them by Friday, I'm thinking of trying to squeeze a quick either new toilets in both of our bathrooms or a quick laundry reno before the valuer comes around.
Oh, yeah. What are you thinking?
Next week. So I think it's probably changing the floor tiles in the laundry is probably not possible in a weekend. I mean, it would be if you had your ducks lined up, ready to go, but I don't. So I think I'll be leaving the floor tiles. It's new cabinetry, new sink.
Well, unless you're going to tile over, it's not a weekend job anyway, because you're going to want to rip them up. Then you're also going to want to screed, and then that screed's going to have to cure.
Dry, yeah.
So, yeah. But if you're doing it, does it have to be a weekend job, or can it be over a few weekends?
Well, the idea is that it happens before the valuer comes around.
Yeah.
Which I'm thinking, I mean, I've been in the queue for nearly 3 weeks, so I'm thinking it's got to be sometime soon.
And this is something that for every listener right now, if you are looking at buying a property at the moment and you've got all your finance pre-approved, make sure that you're with a lender that has like shorter wait times, because I mean, Jack's sort of just been caught up in this because I think by the time everything was getting refinanced, it was already like it had been committed. Yep. But now I don't really want to name names, but just talk to your broker and just say, look, what kind of timeframes are we looking at? Because some are just astronomical, and others
in this environment, it's pretty important to get your property valued as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And I've actually had, I haven't actually lost any deals from this, but I've actually had some colleagues in the office that they've actually had purchasers miss out because it just wasn't coming together.
Yeah.
And through no fault of their own. And that's the frustrating thing from the purchaser. It's not like they're doing anything wrong. They've just signed up to someone or to some lender that's just dragging their heels shockingly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, either I'm thinking the 2 toilets might be a better option because it's kind of a couple of bolts, a little bit of plumbing, silicone, chuck the toilets in and away we go.
I reckon we could almost teach your daughter how to do that. I put off, because I only did my first toilet on the last reno, and I put it off for so long because I was thinking this is going to be so ridiculously hard. And then after I did it, I was like, oh, is that it?
Yeah, okay.
I reckon that all the way. And that'll make a good difference, aesthetically, and depending on what you get, you're looking at a few $100s. Yeah. It's pretty cost effective.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the plan this weekend, I reckon.
Nice.
How about you? What's been happening?
What has been happening? Standard crazy sales week. Everything's going... Yeah, really good at work at the moment, which again, surprisingly, we all thought it wasn't going to be going good, but happy days at the moment. So since I've finished the last reno project, been feeling just a little bit like wanting to get hands-on.
Yep.
Been looking for another property, but nothing's really been jumping out just yet. So it was actually my girlfriend was the one that suggested, she's like, well, I've always wanted a pizza oven. You've told me you've always wanted to make one. Do you want to make one at my place? So I'm like, absolutely. So we're going to be making a video about that, and I'll be making my very first wood oven pizza oven. And I was thinking we could christen that with a pizza and property type video. It felt fitting.
It does fit.
Yeah. So it's going to keep my hands busy over the next few weeks, and give us some kind of interesting, fun content to do as well. So we'll make sure we post that on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, but otherwise, man, that's been about it. I don't think I have any really exciting stories to share, but I am excited about one thing, and that's the guest that we've got on today.
Yeah.
Who do we have on the show today, Jack?
We've got the cash flow king himself. If anyone has been following property investing for the last 10 years.
At least a decade.
They've got to know this man.
Mm-hmm.
It's Nathan Birch. So, we're going to have a chat with Nathan about whatever comes up, I guess. I really want to hear his story kind of from the get-go. We'll kind of get him to share with his roots and, see where it goes.
Absolutely. This is a man that's built a portfolio of 200 plus properties. Yep. So just to reiterate that, not 20, but 200 plus properties.
50 million
it's insanity what he's achieved, and he's not in his 60s or 70s. The guy's in his 30s. He's like a year older than we are. Actually, how old are you? I don't know.
I'm 31.
I'm 34. Okay, so he's wow. I didn't realize I was that much older than you. All right, so he's a year older than me.
Yeah.
He's about 4 years older than Jack. Like this dude has done incredible things, entrepreneurial as well. He's built several companies around. I actually think he's got about a dozen companies. Most of them all revolving around either investment, property investment, whatever it is. But
management, mortgage broking, got his finger in all pies.
Exactly. So we're probably gonna chat with him for a little bit longer, but I want to pick this guy's brains as much as we can because he's got a few opinions on where we might be headed to over the next few years. We're obviously in very uncertain times at the moment.
Yep.
And well, actually, do we have him on the line? Let's jump into it now, Jack.
We do. Nathan, you there?
G'day, Nathan. How are you?
Awesome, boys. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for coming on the show, mate.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we understand that you're booked out like several months in advance. So for anyone listening right now, we're a bit super excited to actually get a little spot in Nathan's schedule.
Oh, thank you, boys. Thank you. It's look, it's a lot of people. I know you guys have been following what I've been putting out there for the last few years, and when I first started talking about property and what it was probably about 11 years ago when I started my business side of things, but I started talking about some weird stuff about 3 years ago. Everyone thought that I was losing my mind. I talked about economic crisis. I called it the GFD. I didn't call it the COVID. I called it the GFD. And people like the financial aspect of why you're being so negative for what's possessed you and whatnot. And I guess a lot of those things that economically that I sort of predicted are sort of coming to fruition today, which is really interesting. Everybody needs sort of help. Like the super funds are getting drained. People are losing money. People are making money. There's lots of cool things that are happening out there. Stimulus packages, interest rates going down to zero, and whatnot. And a lot of people just want help and advice. So just being booked out. So
Well, we're glad to be a part of it.
I guess you've got a head start on everyone else. You've been thinking about it for the last couple of years, whereas everyone else is probably kind of just wrapping their heads around it.
Yeah. That's the thing I was thinking about the other day, actually. And really sort of blessed by the fact that, I've had like haters over the years and people go, oh, this guy here, he's got too much debt, doesn't know what he's doing, watch him when he goes broke. Like I retired in the workforce at the age of 24 in the middle of the GFC, and I've been waiting for this day to come. Because that's where the opportunity lays. But I knew that I've personally got, like nearly 20 mil worth of debt. I've got 18.5 mil worth of debt. I wish I had more, but every 1% rate cut that comes through from these, from stimulus packages, every 1% reduction, that's saving me 185 grand a year. Yeah, so the more dramas out there, the better I'm doing. So yeah.
We might wind it back, and maybe for anyone that isn't aware of you or hasn't seen, you've got various media pieces out there, A Current Affair and Sunday Night. For anyone that hasn't seen any of those, do you mind maybe filling us in on kind of where you started investing in property and kind of how you've kind of come up?
Yeah, a bit of a backstory.
Yeah, for sure. I don't like talking about myself that much. I just like talking about cool things, but I'll try and do so. But I grew up in Western Sydney, blue collar family, no silver spoon in my mouth. A lot of people, when they saw my story years ago, like, oh, this guy here, he's his parents must have helped and whatnot. My dad died at the age of 62. I was 16 years old, and I thought to myself, I don't want to work my whole life and just die and not enjoy it. So one of my main things was to work hard to the age of 30 and be able to build a cash flow stream which would pull me out of the workforce so I wouldn't have to work. And at the age of 13, I was thinking about, I want to own properties, I want to be rich, whatever. I was saving up for my first property from the age of 13. And when I turned 18, bought the first one out in Mount Druitt in Western Sydney. A lot of people think I'm from Mount Druitt just because I'm very candid, I swear a bit rough and stuff like that. But I didn't grow up in the area. I was sort of scared of the area when I first went there. But I just saw the opportunity of the potential for growth and all the infrastructure and whatnot. And I started buying my first property, bought my second property, and I was excited to build out a property portfolio. And I thought to myself, what we've got to remember is this is like bought the first property in 2003. There was no internet. There was no, you're lucky to be able to. Who remembers their first mobile, like a Nokia 5110 or the GH337 Ericsson, which you couldn't even send text messages from.
I remember that.
So you remember, yeah, cool. Well, today we've got like the whole digital world at our fingertips. We've got podcasts, we've got YouTube, we've got Google, we've got realestate.com, domain.com, RP Data, and these sort of tools that are out there to us now. I didn't have the liberty of having back when I first started, and I put together a simple plan. The simple plan was to get an income of like in the early 2000s, 50 grand a year was a good amount of money to earn a year, the average wage. I thought if I could just get 50 passive income from property, that would be amazing. And I went on to try and build out a strategy. And I thought if I could just have 10 properties giving me $100 a week, that's $1,000 a week passive income, I'll hustle my ass off, do what I need to do between the ages sort of 18 to 30. The property every year. Some growth, some debt reduction and whatnot in the middle would be a cool strategy. And I was really scared. I thought, how could I do this? It's not never going to happen and whatnot. And I ended up just buying property. And I think I was like 21 and I had like 8, 9 properties at 21. By the age of 24, I was able to quit my job in the middle of the GFC. I'm 25. I had 25 properties. I've been collecting properties every year since I could sign a contract. Now I'm sitting at over 200 properties in my portfolio. Learned a lot of stuff over the years, and it's just been a journey. Like my cash flow position, I'm over $2 million a year worth of rental income after expenses. About $500,000 positive cash flow per annum, and life's good. So yeah.
Yeah, that is one hell of a backstory, Nathan. And I've been following you since around property number 20, which for most people's portfolio, that's probably when they're kicking back and sitting pretty and going, we've arrived, we've made it, where that's like 10% started for where you're at now. And I remember actually this is years and years ago, chatting with you about it and just watching your videos. A lot of the properties you were buying then were really like high yielding, some regional sort of assets. And it seems like over the years you kind of switched to more metropolitan sort of properties to buy and add to your portfolio. Is there any reason that you made the switch when it was working so well in the beginning for the regional high yields?
Yeah. So that's a really good point there. That when you saw me about 20, 25 sort of properties, those properties that I had were at that stage, but I never had a video camera. I never had YouTube, and I couldn't film what I saw prior to that. So I look at property very differently to many other people. I don't even know anyone else that really does look at it the way that I looked at it. I look at property purely as a vehicle to get me from part A to part B, right? From your destination from where you are to your destination. And I really like to think of it as if you're going for a journey to travel somewhere. I often ask people, how would you get to Perth? It's just one of my favourite questions asking people. And people are like, why ask me how to get to Perth? And I'm like, well, how would you get to Perth? And they go, you'd fly there. And when they say they fly there, I'm like, okay, cool. That's the wrong answer, because I ask people that live in Perth, how do you get to Perth? And they go, people fly here. Right? I'm like, no, you're in Perth already. The destination is important to know where we're heading to. The property is just the vehicle, right? If you're already in Perth, you don't need to go anywhere. If you're not in Perth, you need to work out where are you right now, and then what options and what vehicles do you have in order to get there. So for me, property is purely that vehicle. So a plane wouldn't land at your house, so you need to catch a car, an Uber, a train, a bus. You can walk, you can skateboard, you can hitchhike, catch a ferry, catch a jet ski, whatever to travel to the destination. But at each step throughout my investing journey, I had a goal of creating cash flow and income. I had a net worth goal to start off with. And I needed to find options on how I could get there. And when I first started, I bought my first half dozen, say 6, 10 properties in Sydney. I was very opinionated. because people told me stuff like, oh, houses go up and units don't. I was opinionated by the fact that, oh, I don't want to go to Queensland. Like, that's another state. Those things are not so good there or whatever. And they're all very costly opinions. And I realised at a point, like, there was a point when I couldn't buy any more houses.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to buy property. And then I found this little townhouse in Western Sydney, and it was 120 grand, and it rented for like 170 a week. I can get a loan for that. I'm like, I don't want a townhouse, but if I can't get anything else, I'll get a townhouse. Bought the townhouse, and I realised that the owner paid 200 grand prior to what I bought it for. And I was like, hang on a second, no, I'm picking this thing up very cheap. It's below replacement cost. I couldn't build a townhouse for 120 grand. And I was like, that's cool. I've got a property. So I got to that property, and I went back to the broker, and I was like, can I buy another one? The broker was like, yeah, you can buy another one. I was like, at the same price. And they're like, sure, yeah, you can buy that. But how can I get these two townhouses, but I couldn't get one house? And I realised it's how the back end of the banks work. It's the hurdle that you've got to overcome. It's the cash flow hurdle. So when I started making all those videos and putting them out there, sort of, at 20 properties sort of level, I was, at the tail end of my career. I was like, I quit my job. I was like video cameraing, taking around, showing people renos that I was doing. And I left my job. The day I left my job was the day that I realised that I was doing myself a disservice by being in a job. What I mean by that is the pay slip that I was getting wasn't enough to service. I was like, I'm sort of tapping myself out. So I realised that if I could take 200 grand worth of equity, the properties that I bought in Sydney had good capital inside them, but I needed to boost my cash flow for the banks to lend to me still. So I pulled out some equity and went and bought some fire damage, burnt out, kicked in, vandalised properties in regional areas. And when I was doing those renos, I was going to just flip them on. I was just going to go, okay, I'll buy it for 30 grand and sell it for 80 grand or 100 grand and make myself 50K or 40K, and that money would then be formed as my income. But I owned them all outright. I had like a half dozen properties. I was like, these things are bringing me in like $1,000 a week. I can add that to my cash flow now. And I sort of used that property to navigate and leverage myself. Like the buying these properties in the regional areas that were vandalised and really bad. Like there's a lot of the admin issues and stuff. I never wanted to go in there. And I learned a lot because I was just having to do the grind and the hustle. But at the same time, I realised that, I always wore like nice clothes and whatever. I had to go and put myself down so I looked like a bit rough and fit in the area, because otherwise I get belted or something. So I had to
take off a shoe as you're walking down the street?
Pretty much. Like, take out my front tooth. I don't know. Like, I looked at, the clothes that I'm wearing. I could go in nice clothes and nice car. I was driving a $250, I think it was a Datsun 720 I bought. A Datsun 720. It's a red two-seater, single cab, flat tray, real crappy thing. So I didn't want to take my Ford Falcon, which was a cool car at the time. I didn't want to take that into these areas because as soon as you drive through, they'll throw rocks at it. So I had to drive a $250 car in here, and it sort of, the hustle was like real at that time. And those properties, like, they served a purpose. They were a vehicle. So I never wanted to do them, but I had to do them because it was going to help me get to the next leg of the journey. So if someone was coming from overseas to Sydney or Gold Coast or Perth or wherever, they would need to catch a plane no matter what. You couldn't drive that distance. So that each leg of the journey to get to the end destination, if you have clarity on where that destination is and where you are, you've got to look at the options and go, what's the best vehicle for me to travel in at this time to get to that goal? And those properties that were regional just served the purpose of helping me sort of push through and get through to the next level of my portfolio.
Yeah, right. Well, what I'm really hearing is that you did the switch not because it wasn't working, but it was because it served its purpose. It was never something that you really set out to do. It was this is what I need to do to get to where I want to go. It's done what it needs to do, and yeah, next step.
Exactly. And those properties, like, did they go up a lot of money? Like, I made money, like they doubled. Some of them even burnt down again. And I got like triple what I paid, quadruple what I paid for from insurance, and that's cool too. But it's just the way the cookie crumbled. But they were sort of heavy, sort of administration and stuff like that. But they just served their purpose. And they enabled me to service some more other sorts of properties, and with a bit of faith and luck. But over time, I was able to just purchase other stuff. And why I say faith is that I didn't understand exactly how I was going to get every step along the way. Like, so if you go on that journey, you don't know what time the ferry's going to arrive to the terminal, or you don't know if there's going to be traffic on the way. All right, so little things in between that. The markets changed. The GFC occurred. Interest rates went down. Like, interest rates came down from 725 basis points at the RBA down to 300 basis points over a 5-month period. Like, that's a 66% reduction at the RBA. Like, interest rates were like 9%, went down to 5% on millions of dollars of debt. Like, that enabled extra cash flow to come through to my account. The rent rose in value from $80, $100 a week in extra, and that sort of boosted my cash flow and enabled me to go and purchase more capital city type of properties. And if I look back on my portfolio, there was a point where I had 100% houses, and then there was probably a point where I had 50% capital and 50% like capital city and 50% sort of regional properties, and it went to about 70% capital cities, and now it's 95% capital cities. The portfolio, got to a point where I had about 70% strata properties at one point, like townhouses, units, and villas. And now I'd say maybe like 50% strata properties, maybe like 25% houses, and 25% miscellaneous sort of stuff like motels, unit blocks, shopping centres, land banking, exercises, and stuff like that.
For anyone sitting at home, I guarantee there's a lot of people sitting at home listening to this thinking, I went to see my mortgage broker 6 months ago and they told me my serviceability wasn't fit, so I couldn't borrow any more money. They should take a leaf out of Nathan's book. I mean, you've kind of worked out that your serviceability is knackered, and then you've worked out a way to kind of solve that via buying high-yielding regional properties, which is, I mean, a lot of people don't even think that, do they? They just kind of think, oh, my mortgage broker told me no, that means no.
Well, I run, as a part of my business, I don't want to do like a shameless plug with that, but like, as a part of my business unit, we've got like a dozen different sort of finance-related sort of professional services businesses. I was on the phone to one of my brokers last night at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. I was walking through the area. I went for a 2-hour walk and just started calling people because that's when I had time to do so. And I was talking about one of our clients, and I was like, what can we do to get this guy back to servicing? And he was failing short by servicing by a few grand a month. And I was like, what about if I purchase a string of properties that are purchase cash, understanding how the bank's sort of back-end systems work, and be able to get him back into servicing. And what you're mentioning there just made me think about a deal that we had last year that I secured for my buyer's agency clients. It was a bulk deal in Sydney, and it was $560,000 per unit. It's in a really good area. The valuations on purchase were $662,000, so it's like $100,000 in each deal straight up to buy, and that was in the depressed market, sort of like 12, 18 months ago. And I had 2 of the 10 clients that got stuck with servicing, but APRA had changed all the back-end lending policies, and they couldn't service, so they had $200,000 cash, but could only borrow $200,000. So it was just random that 2 people had similar sort of numbers and positions. But the $200,000 deposit and $200,000 servicing, $400,000 won't get you $560K purchase. So we could say, okay, don't go ahead, don't buy anything. But what I did is I found these high-yielding properties, which are very random. Like, I get them occasionally time to time, and they're not bought because they're the best property deal ever or they've got a high yield. But they're like $50,000 rent for like $250, $300 a week. And there is strata fees and council rates and stuff. It's not like you're getting heaps of money in your pocket. But that property, purchasing it outright, had enabled these clients which couldn't service it, boosted their servicing so they could come back and service a $400,000 loan. they've purchased one of these properties cash. They've been able to service for another 200,000. So suddenly their serviceability is 400,000. They've got 150 grand left over. So now they service to do the purchase. So the property's purely the vehicle, and a lot of people don't realise that. Like everyone's like, I want to buy a house, split the block in half, build a granny flat or whatever. It's like granny flat, yeah, cool. I'm about accumulating assets. Like if we're going to see a property market double, let's just say there's a market boom tomorrow and everything doubled, would you want to double, 200 grand into 400 grand? Would you want to double $1 million into $2 million? Or would you want to double $5 million into $10 million? So that's the way I look at it. It's like you want to take the asset base through to the future. And yeah, the property's purely the big.
You really are an outside the box thinker. I like this. When you say you know how the back end systems of the bank worked, how'd you end up sort of figuring that out? Was that just picking mortgage brokers' brains, or sitting down with the banks until they sort of gave you all the answers, or did you work in a bank at one stage? How did that come about?
Yeah, I never worked at a bank. I wouldn't have the patience for that. I ask questions. I never accept no. Like everyone says, like everyone just obeys what they're told in life, and some people think I'm a bit rebellious and that I always be respectful or not, but or whatnot. But it's like I don't like being told no. Like I want to understand. What's happening out there in the marketplace. I want to understand, why is this the way that it is, and how can we do it differently? And if I see, trends that occur, if everyone's getting told no and there's a glitch in the matrix, like, well, tell me about that glitch. Like, what's the, why is it happening like that? What can we do to get around that? And I guess I've been a part of over 10,000 real estate transactions over the years. And yeah, like just seeing, they're not 10,000 purchases that I've done, but like stuff that I've represented other investors on buying, whether it be from a purchase point from me acquiring the property for them, whether it be, my firm being the lawyer acting on behalf of them, or being financing their deals and whatnot, and just seeing little glitches there that it's like, okay, what about if we stuck it this way? I feel sometimes like the, that taco ad where the kid goes, why don't we get a taco that stands upright, and then they make the taco.
And she's like, that's both.
I feel like that. But we won't talk about tacos. But it's,
You're making me hungry now. I like Mexican food.
I like pizza better, actually.
Oh, good. Well, you're in the right podcast then.
Glitches, like I'm just looking for the inconsistencies and trying to ask questions of how we can get there. Like, I don't want to hear no. Like, tell me no. It's like, oh, what about if we do this? Like, if I was a kid again, I'd be the most annoying kid. My mum said that I was like the most annoying kid, It's like, well, she's all special, but, it depends on who's asking. But with the, like, I'd be asking the question, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, people in life, like, we go to a 12-year indoctrination camp, i.e. school, and, we're sort of slapped around, programmed to go out and become an obedient sort of tax slave. And, people are told not to ask questions. It's like, just accept what it is. It's like, well, I'm not accepting of what it is. I want to know, what can I do? I want something. What do I have to do? Tell me what I've got to do. I'll go do it. Tell me I have to walk 500 kilometres. I'll go walk 500 kilometres. I want to get the result.
Absolutely.
You've set me up extremely well for my next question, Nathan. So I've been watching your YouTube channel for the last couple of months, and you've got some videos around hyperinflation. Do you mind maybe explaining what hyperinflation is and what it does for existing debt and people with property portfolios that have big mortgages to their name?
Yeah, no, cool. I'll get onto that. This is like the most exciting part of like what it's like my most favourite question, because if you saw me right now, I'm sort of smile from ear to ear.
I can hear it in your tone.
It's like, it's just exciting because people. So let's just be really clear. Like when we use dollars, right? Say we go and we buy something for $10. What is a dollar? Like, is it money? Everyone thinks it's money. It's not money. It's currency. Currency is just an exchange medium of trade. But we're not taught how these things work at the back end. we think that the government is the ruling class. Well, the government is sort of middle management. We've got the central banks of the world, which are the ones that are really calling the policies and making the shots. And looking at, the currency that's floating around in the system, I made some very outlandish claims a few years ago. People were like, this guy's lost the plot, I'm going to unsubscribe. And I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, I wonder what people thought now, after unsubscribed, right? It's like people are joining more than ever. It's like looking at the things that I said 2 years ago. I said that we're going to see a global financial depression. The currency will die that we have, being the dollar system. And I'll break down the currency in a moment and how many times they have died in the past. I've talked about that the property doesn't rise in value. It's just the money that you're buying with or the currency you're using is losing its value. So if we look at currency, I started collecting coins when I was a kid, and I was like, I wanted money. I wanted to be rich when I grew up and whatnot. And my definition of rich has certainly changed a lot over the years. And looking at the money, I was like, why don't we use these coins anymore? What happened to this one? What happened to that one? And it made me research a lot. And I realised that in the last 1,000 years, the first hyperinflation occurred in first fiat currency turned into a hyperinflation was from China in 1024 AD, and it died of a hyperinflation. And there's been over 10,000 different fiat currencies throughout history which have died via a hyperinflation. There's a lot of recent ones. We've seen Argentina, we've seen Venezuela, Zimbabwe. The list goes on. The biggest hyperinflation that ever occurred in currency debasement, happened in Hungary I think it was like the 1940s. Back in the 1920s in Germany, the Weimar government printed so much money, that's why it caused Hitler to sort of rise to power and be able to do all those crazy things. But we use a dollar nowadays, and most people are like, the dollar's been here since 1966 when we went from the imperial to the metric system. But it's a bit more sinister than that. The dollar was created in the early 1900s. It took its form in the US in 1913 by the Federal Reserve in the US. Lots of conspiracy theories around this sort of stuff as well, so I don't want to go in there and pay on a tangent. I'm just trying to go from a high level. In 1933, the currency, there was a thing called the Gold Confiscation Act, where the currency died at that point, and they confiscated. They made it illegal to have gold, and they just basically revalued it. In 1971 is when the real thing happened, where the currency changed globally. Well, they closed the thing called the Bretton Woods Agreement, and they backed the world currency, pegged it to the US dollar. That's where everything's traded in the US dollar.
That was under Nixon, wasn't it?
President Nixon, Dick Nixon, and Henry Kissinger.
Okay.
And basically that's when the whole monetary system went to a complete fiat. It used to be backed by gold and silver. Fort Knox, everyone says can't break into Fort Knox. Who knows what's in there? But we're in a position now, which it happened on the 15th of August 1971. This year, 2020, we're heading into the 49th year of this currency. Average lifespan of a currency is around 27 years. And it's on its last legs. Like in 2008, when the GFC occurred, the currency that we used turned into a vegetative state. Everyone goes, house prices are unaffordable. Let's break it down and look at other things like paddle pops, just an ice block. Here, like an ice block used to sell for 80 cents pre-GFC. Now a paddle pop sells for $2.40. If you had $1,000, you could have bought 1,200 paddle pops going back in 2008. Here we are in 2020 at $2.40. On $1,000, you can only buy 400. So you've lost 2/3 of your purchasing ability.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not so much the asset going up in value, it's that your purchasing power has gone down?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So where I look at property at this point, I believe that there's one last cycle in this currency that we use. Everyone goes, what about if interest rates go back to 10%? Right? That'd be great. Everything would collapse then. The money system we've got at the moment is the currency that we've got and we use is fraudulent. It's not a property market in a bubble. It's not a it's the chessboard that we're playing on that is the scam, if we were to call it there. If we look at interest rates, if we look at the Sydney property boom that occurred in post GFC, the market had fallen in Sydney. I was using Sydney for this example. It fell between 2003 to 2008. It went backwards. Property that was selling for like 300 in 2003, 2004 was selling for 250, 240, something like that in 2007, 2008. When the GFC occurred, they dropped interest rates from 7.25 at the RBA down to 3%. We saw things starting to chug along again. From 2008 to 2010, 11, the market sort of caught back up to where it was in 2003. That was due to money creation or currency creation and what they were doing at the back end of the central banks around the world. From 2011 to about 2016, the market doubled. If you were to look at the market from 2007 to 2016, you'd be like, there's 9 years of growth, doubled and a half. It's outlandish. But if you look at it from 2003 to 2009, it looks like it went backwards. If you look at it from 2011 to 2003, it looks like it's done nothing for a decade. And that was purely each time that the markets moved was due to monetary policy changing. In 2016, they introduced APRA and made it more difficult to purchase properties for investors to try and cool the market. Basically, what was occurring at the time is an interest rate rise at that point would have killed the economy. So all we've got to remember is that not like everyone just looks at the property, but they don't look at the whole market. The whole market that we've got is business debt. We've got corporate debt. We've got government debt. We've got automobile debt. We've got afterpay, zip pay. They're just constantly trying to create new sort of vehicles for the currency to be manipulated. If we look at interest rates, there's a thing called a bank bill swap rate, which a lot of commercial businesses work on. So if interest rates went up, up until the 4th of June last year, Australia was at 150 basis points. The interest rates had not moved for 3 years. If interest rates had gone up by 1%, it would have hurt the homeowner, it would have hurt retail, it would have hurt automobile sales, it would have killed the whole economy. So if they couldn't raise interest rates, how could they stop the market from getting so inflated? They just made it more difficult for people to sort of push that prices up and affect the investor market. If we look at the market now, we've just seen, in June last year, I put out a video yesterday and looked at Australia's M1 money supply. You will see throughout the last 30 years, there's been about 400 billion, it's never been over 400 billion in M1 money supply. We're up to $1.2 trillion from that date moving forward.
Isn't inflation and the money supply usually directly correlated as well?
Correct. But we're in a deflationary period, and we've been in the deflationary period since late 2016.
Okay.
And that's where everyone's caught on to.
And this is where it's leading towards the hyperinflation that we're not going to see it right now because of the deflationary period that we're in, but because of the money supply that's basically being introduced to get us out of this, like, let's just say, crappy situation, we're going to pay for it later with a huge amount of inflation. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
You can't go eating Maccas every day and not get fat, Like, you eat every meal takeaway, it's inevitably going to be different to the person that goes to the gym every day and gets built.
Yeah, tell me about it. The gyms are closed and I've started a terrible Tim Tam addiction at night now.
I've been improving my life the last few years. I used to smoke cigarettes a lot and I quit smoking about 500 days ago, actually.
Good work.
And, and I was eating food out of a paper bag all the time. I only eat organic food now, alkaline water and whatnot. I never drink really, and I just try and do the healthier things for my body. I don't go to the gym like I used to do, but I'm starting to be more active just because I've got, trying to fit in my day. I try and fit as much of my days as possible. But you can't just have a week spent down at the pub and not expect to pay for it later with your health, right? And we've got the financial health here of printing money. It's like we're binging debt. There is a debt problem, but the bigger problem is that they can't have deflation. So whatever they do to stop deflation is going to cause inflation. But we're at a point, we've got interest rates at 0%. There's 25 basis points at the RBA.
Mm.
There hasn't been a rate rise at the RBA since 2010, a decade of rate cut.
I've never thought of it that way.
The last rate increase was 2010.
Yeah.
We're in 2020 and we're at 0%. 25 basis points. People like to correct me out there and say, we're not at 0%. We're at 25 basis points. We're going negative.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Technically, no, it's not zero, but it may as well be tomato. And on the negative side of things, I mean, I've been listening to you talk about that for a little while. I remember bringing that up in a few work conferences, and everyone looked at me like I was just like from another planet. And I was like, well, no, but listen to this dude, Nathan. He's looks like he knows what he's talking about. And they're like, Todd, that is absolutely mental. And now I brought it up again a few weeks ago. They're like, oh yeah, no, this looks like it could really happen now. It's like it's already happened in, was it Sweden and Japan and.
Yeah, but so the difference between Japan's money supplies, they're printing their own, we're borrowing from other nations and their central bank. So you could have a stagflation if you just print your own money. It's just basically watering down your food and chopping. Like if you say, let's got to feed a family of 10 people, and we've got a pizza, and we cut it into 10 slices, well, there's only one slice each. If we say there's another 20 people, we go, okay, we cut it into 30 slices, one pizza. We need to order more pizzas in.
Yeah. Okay.
So from the currency of what we've got, we're borrowing, which is cool. Like we're getting debt from all different places. We've got a central bank at the moment buying up the bond market. Like I was looking at an article, and I screenshot it and posted it into this thing that I've got called Birch Feed, and I screenshot it, threw it in there. A few weeks ago, it said the worst death toll and crisis in US history, more deaths than 9/11 in one day. And then in the next line, it says the greatest growth in the Dow Jones ever in one day. I'm like, how do you have that? Yeah. Right? It's a catastrophe. People are dying. Right? Businesses are closed. Unemployment's like running through the roof. I did some numbers yesterday. We've got 13 million people in our economy that are working in Australia. We've got I don't have all the numbers right here in front of me at the moment. But half is now being paid. You've got like 1.5 million people on like Centrelink. It's a job seeker looking for a job. Mm-hmm. We've got like 20. We've got 2.2 million or 2.5 million people that are public service. So it's another sort of 15% of state paid people. Mm-hmm. Now we've got like a few million people which are on job keeper allowance, which is a universal basic income. Like I spoke about universal basic income 3 years ago. I'm looking at it. People have been programmed that, go save your money, go do what the TV tells us to do, go do, what society tells us to do. We're in a different monetary system. We're a commodity-backed currency back in the past. Like we're backed by gold and other resources. Now, if you want more money, like back in the old days, you used to just have to like melt a coin down, shave the edges off a coin, get a bit of money out of that. Then they had to go and melt other metals into the coin to try and mess with money. Then they just started printing more money. They don't even have to print money anymore. They just go, here's the IOU. We'll just put some digits here, cook the books, and, here we go. We've got some more money. We're fine. And that's all they're doing. They're just printing their way through this.
Because isn't that
the taxpayer?
That's the difference between money and a currency, isn't it? Like a currency isn't actually backed by anything, but money has to be backed by something. Like for every
fiat currency,
yeah,
fiat currency. Fiat means fake. It's
All right.
fiat currency. We've got fake currency. It's no different to monopoly. With the currencies being printed, we're at a 25 basis points. Imagine if the interest rate went back up to 0.5%. That means it would be a 100% increase. The cost would double. If it goes to 1%, it will quadruple. So if people are fearing the interest rate is going to go through the roof, they could go up at the bank level. And the reason why I said it could go up via a bank level is that there's some losses for the banks to cover during the fact that they're not getting cash flow in from mortgage holders at the moment. They're on mortgage holidays and stuff like that.
Yep.
So there could be a short-term issuance there, which would put more pressure on the RBA to have to drop their rates to negative. If we're looking, I think it's Denmark, it's a Danish bank, and it's negative 0.5%. So if you take out $1 million, you get paid $5,000 a year to have in the loan.
It's just mind-boggling to think of that. Like that's how it actually works.
Yeah, that's because the dollar's dead.
All right, so we've got a currency that, from what you're researching, is on the way out. Whether that's going to be a few years, a decade, or however long it is, we've got because I'd be happy to sit here and nerd out economically with you, but most of our listeners are probably more mums and dads focused on sort of actually understanding the property investment side of things. So I want to be selfish and just keep talking about this with you, but I've got a feeling.
I get too excited.
Well, no, I genuinely do find it fascinating. But so let's just, for now, look at it as like, yes, this is our money system, and let's just keep going down this path and going, all right, so it's broken, it needs to be fixed. Exactly which way it's going to go is kind of unforeseen, but we've got a few different options of where it can go. How can we then best structure things within that? Because what I'm kind of taking from what you're saying, if we are going to head down that hyperinflationary period, or even just a section of like really rapid inflation, is debt yourself to the eyeballs. And I know it's not financial advice, it's not financial advice from me, from Jack, from you, but if you can debt yourself with today's dollars and then pay it off with inflated dollars later, that kind of makes sense to me.
Correct. So let's assume that we take out a mortgage today at $200,000, purchase property for $200,000. If there was a high inflation period, like if we look at, I'll use my parents as an example. They bought a family home. I grew up in it. My mum still lives there. $13,000 in Parramatta in Sydney, and that property's worth like $1.2 million today. When they went to the bank, they used to have to put down a 50% deposit. 50%.
That's huge.
Now you can get your loan for 5%. Yeah. When they took out the loan, like $6,000-7,000, they're saying interest rate of 10%. 10% interest rate on $6,500, $650 a year. Nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a $80,000 salary, like my dad was an NRMA patrolman. He was like a motor mechanic. It'd be on like $80,000, I'd imagine. I don't know. I'd imagine today it'd be like that. But his salary was about $2,000 a year. So $2,000 a year minus a bit of tax, minus the $650 worth of interest that would have been paid. That leaves you with a position of not much money, but everything was cheaper. Everyone was buying cans of Coke from the big W when you're a kid, pushing the button, putting your 60 cents in or your 80 cents in.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like $3 a can of drink. The Coke didn't get any better. The Sprite didn't get better. Fanta doesn't taste any different. It tastes worse, but that's a different subject. But the cost of the good has gone up. If my parents still owed $6,500 or even $13,000 on their property today, stamp duty would be double what the purchase price was. The rent, 6 months worth of rent would pay out the whole mortgage. So throughout 50 years, there's been massive sort of growth appearing in the property, but it wasn't. It was just manipulation of things. If you look at some of the manipulated sort of facts over the course of the last 50 years, growing up as a child, and I don't mean in any bad way, generally one parent worked, one parent stayed at home to mind the kids. It would be politically correct on this side. In the early 1990s, we had a recession that we had to have, and they put childcare rebates in. So now that you've got, instead of just one parent working and one parent being a stay-at-home parent, suddenly you've got two parents working. So now you've got double the amount of income to tax and to use for paying for things, so they can take the economy away. In the early 2000s, we started giving baby bonuses. We did first homeowner grants. We've dropped interest rates. So each time there's been a crisis over the years, they just print their way through by manipulating things and putting, more currency to float around the system via whatever things they can manipulate. But now we've got mum and dad both stuck to pay the mortgage. We've got, everything's being pushed to the parameters, like interest rates at 0%, thereabouts. Like, we can't go lower. We can, but it's going to be negative. It's going to be really interesting to see. But we've seen 50 years of inflation occur like that. I would foresee us in a position, I'm predicting 50 years worth of inflation in 10 years. What I'm seeing the benefit of this occurring is that if someone was on 50 grand a year, that paid like $300 a week rent, 15 grand a year in rent, whatever, right? Like the expenses in our lifestyle today, we could technically see a 50 grand income go to a 500 grand income. 500 grand income, and let's say that rent now 150 grand a year. Everything gets inflated away. That means that you could pay off, let's say you bought a property for 200 grand today and you've got a 150 grand loan on, 1 year's worth of rent repayments would cover the mortgage. Just like in the example of my parents over 50 years. But it would happen within a decade.
There's a property investor, where he's actually passed away now, Polites, huge in Adelaide. You see, if you're not an Adelaidean, you look around and go, why does it say Polites everywhere? But it's because he owns most of Adelaide. And I remember talking to someone once that said one of the buildings there, the equivalent, what was it, the rent that he gets for just the shop front used to be the same amount of rent he got for the entire building when he bought it.
There we go. That's the smoking gun there, right? I think that'll happen in the next decade. Like our debt will be forgiven. Like people, we have got a debt crisis here. We've got a massive debt crisis. They're going to have to print through this. Like these job keepers, there's a term called a universal basic income, a UBI, and that is basically what JobKeeper is now. It's like the government has to intervene by taking out debt, print more money in order to keep businesses open. Otherwise, the businesses will go under. They can't have deflation on a rapid scale. I've been in times where I've had adversity financially, things have been tough or tight or whatever, and it gets lonely sometimes. But here we've got a nation. We don't even have just a country. We have every country around the world which is getting crippled via inactivity. And, these things will be, leaving scars that we haven't even seen yet. Imagine when all the reporting comes in later this year and companies are bankrupt. Like, they're going to need to keep stimulating this economy. So if they're printing, let's assume that there's just $1 million in circulation in total in Australia. $1 million, and every house costs $20. An annual salary could be $5, right? Just for simple terms. Yep. Let's say that they doubled the currency supply out there and they added an extra $1 million in the system. An extra $1 million, where would it go? Let's just say that it gets chopped equally between everything. The $20 house turns to $40. The $5 worth of food salary goes to $10. Like, it finds a way. It's like you have a cup of cordial and you pour water into it. It'll taste okay when you pour the cup in and fill it up. But when you pour a bucket in, a hose in, pour a little bit of cordial in the pool, you're not going to taste it. It loses its ability of being effective. And that's what's happening in the currency now.
Well, to pull things back onto more the property investing focus, and away from like the economic sort of standpoint, for anyone building a portfolio now and looking at, I suppose, I'm always fascinated whenever we talk to people like yourself that have quite extensive portfolios. There must have been a few additions in there that you've just gone, why did I do that? Or like this almost ended me, or just something that people can really learn from. Is there any stories that you'd be happy to share with people that they could maybe benefit from and kind of really pivot away from certain mistakes when they're building their portfolio?
Yeah, there's lots of them. But naturally over the years, there's things that I could have done smarter. Like, just beforehand, we were talking about when I bought all houses and I didn't go and buy the townhouses. There were times where I bought in Sydney and didn't want to go to Brisbane. I remember in 2004, Christmas 2004, it was like entering 2004. I was 18. I had a girlfriend that I went to Queensland with. We meant to go to like Dream World and Movie World and all the touristy things. And I discovered this location in Brisbane, and there was no internet to find out about it and stuff. It was very basic back then. And I wanted to go and check this area out. And, it caused, a bit of grief because, like, why are we going to these areas? Like, let's go on holiday. I was like, no, I'm going to check out these things. And I found these properties that were like $50,000 each. They're like 2-bedroom townhouses in Brisbane, 50 grand each. And they rented for like 110 a week. I turned around and I was excited. I was like, yeah, I want to buy some. I thought to myself, I was like, these things won't go up because they're in Queensland, an opinion. These things won't go up because they're strata property, an opinion. These things, I can't go and fix the tap washer if something goes wrong, an opinion. I'm not a tradie. I'm not a handyman. I'm an investor. I need to look at the fundamentals of things. These properties went up to about 240 and now sell for about 180. The market came back from the top.
Mm-hmm.
The cycle is different there. So those things have quadrupled. My opinions cost me hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. The rent on those properties is now like $250 a week. So $250 a week times 52 would be 13 grand. 13 grand on 50 grand would be like 26%. It's like pretty good return in a capital city.
Yeah.
But I said no to the deal because of limiting beliefs. About 4 years ago, I went on a rampage. This is when I came across that we had a liquidity crisis brewing. I went out and bought $10 million worth of property with no loans. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll sort it out. They're on delayed settlement. And I went to the bank. The bank stalled. They didn't have the liquidity to send out. They changed their parameters of lending. And I was at a point where I was either going to lose the 10% deposit times $10 million, so it's like $1 million that I would lose, or I'd have to find a way. And I found a way to make it happen. I got beaten along the way. I was running a gauntlet there for a period of like 12, 24 months. But I settled every single one of those properties. And those properties were large sort of land holdings. So during the course of the next sort of boom cycle, and as we come through this hyperinflation, like just in Sydney alone, I've got about 150,000 square metres of land in Sydney that I hardly ever talk about. And the hurdles to acquire that, it nearly crippled me. Like there was articles out there, people going, "Oh, Nathan's in money trouble." No, I wasn't in money trouble. I just had to hustle to make this happen. I didn't want to lose $1 million, so I just stretched myself. There's been times where things have not always worked out the right way, but having a portfolio, having been well invested, being well educated, has always given me options on how I can sort of navigate and get through any market cycles. If I can relate it just to everyone else in the current market, something recently that I saw is I've got about 50,000 people here that my database, and I manage thousands of properties for people through my property management business. I have a lot of people that actually did lose their jobs recently and needed a bit of extra cash flow. The properties, what we did is we started paying our owners on a weekly basis instead of monthly for their rent. And what that enabled them to do is have cash flow throughout this period. So they could put their mortgages on hold, collect their cash flow, still pay for food and pay for family and whatnot. Having that property gave them the option of being able to do that. And I always just look at the property, as I said at the start of this podcast, this is a vehicle to help get you from where you are to where you want to be. And the options that it brings to the table is the most imperative part.
So the most, I suppose, biggest hurdle that I'm really taking out of that was limiting beliefs in the beginning and missing out on deals that could have made a lot of money on because the way that you were looking at it was maybe had the blinkers on.
Correct. The opinions cost me more money than anything. Like the time where I pushed myself and I realised the banking system had changed. Everyone was telling me to pull out and don't do them, just walk away. And I'm like, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm going to beat it. Yeah, so there's been different levels bring sort of different devils out to challenge you. And the opinions was probably the biggest one. that's why I've got such an open mindset. But okay, that's interesting. Let's look at that. Yeah.
So are there any big sacrifices? I know the thing I like about your style is you're renowned for rolling into the office in a white t-shirt and kind of plain clothing, but you do have a Bentley. Any like sacrifices that you've had to kind of make along the way?
At each level, there's always been some sort of sacrifice. So I was saying to you guys beforehand, like I'm booked out until August, September this year, like I'm like 4 months in advance. Like I've got people like literally like I was on the phone with my staff at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like time is probably my biggest sacrifice at the moment, but I'm trying to. But there's only one point in time. Like this is a once in a generational sort of thing that's going on. Yeah. So I want to know how I carried myself through that. But at different times, like there's been hurdles where I've had to work 2 full-time jobs in the early days just to save up, get those deposits, and to make deals happen. I was very clear on my goals. I didn't know how in the hell I was going to get, $1,000 a week, 10 properties. But it just seemed so absurd back in the day. Like there was no one talking about building property portfolios out there. Negative gearing was a big thing when I first started investing. There was no, this guy's built 10 properties, nothing like that. And I was like, I just want to get 10 properties. And having clarity of where I was heading to and what I needed to do in order to get there was probably the best thing to keep me on track. Because you can be sort of sidetracked. You can be like, oh, I want to go and relax a little bit. I want to go party. I want to go travel. I want to sell off my. I've never going to sell my properties for anything. Like those properties, it took me a lot to accumulate them, so I'm not going to just offload them easily. And yeah, being able to have sort of clarity of where you're heading to doesn't become a sacrifice because all I realise is that I'm getting closer to the places where I want to be. Yeah.
So it sounds like you made sacrifices, but they didn't feel like sacrifices because you believed in the end goal. That's
had your eye on the prize.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like today, I'm here with a pair of tracksuit pants and a t-shirt and a pair of thongs. The thongs are on the other side of the room, I think.
You're the actual barefoot investor.
Yeah. I'm the OG, mate. I'm the OG of it. But yeah, with it, like I do have stress. I've got lots of staff, I've got lots of things I'm doing, but I don't look at the stress. Like it's just things come up throughout your day. Things go wrong, right? You're going to get stressed about everything. You're going to just be in submission to the world and just live a cotton wool lifestyle. And like I look at risk. Risk is one of the biggest things that I need to minimise out of every move that I make. If I want to do a burnout in the Bentley, go around the roundabout, might sound fun, race someone at a traffic light, I've got to look at that as a consequence of if I have an accident, I'm going to lose everything. So, I'm constantly, that's why people think I should be out on a boat partying and whatnot. I've got probably most people, I'd have a boring life. Like I just, do cool things that I think is cool in line with what I want to do. But I've got the options to the property and the choices that I made at certain steps, the choices that I make today. I'm not even looking at the decision, the outcome for me. Like I'm looking at when I have children, it's like I'm planning for like the next few generations. Like that's the level of where my mindset's at today. But at the start, it was like I just don't want to have to work. Now it's like this cause is bigger than me. It's bigger than like my business is bigger than me. Like there's a community. There's lots of things that are out there that are bigger. So it's like need to be mindful of that, and without having clarity, you wouldn't observe that in a normal day-to-day life.
Well, now that we're getting really deep, let's delve into arguably the most important question of the entire podcast. Nathan Birch, what is your favourite pizza?
Supreme.
You were so quick. Just most people think about that for ages. This is what you always order, isn't it? There was not even hesitation.
Supreme. Without hesitation. I do like barbecue chicken, but that like say if you had a pizza and like I'd eat maybe like I'm a big guy, like I'm like 6'4". A lot of people think I'm short. I'm like hands like the size of a dinner plate sort of thing. But I'll eat a whole pizza, and I'd always try and like encourage someone around me. I'll get a supreme, and they'll be like, "You should get a barbecue chicken." It's like, "Oh, I'll get a barbecue. Yeah, okay, I'll get a barbecue chicken." And then I'll be like, "Oh, can I swap some, 2 pieces of my one for 2 pieces of your one?" Because I don't mind the taste of barbecue chicken, but supreme's like that's the meal.
Is there a place that you normally get it from, or you just like straight up Domino's, use the app, it's easy?
No, like I actually don't mind, and I know it's really bad, but I like the Pizza Hut deep pan one, but it has to be cooked right. It has to be fresh and steaming, not like thrown around in a box and sort of old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't mind that, but there's a fair few Italian places. I actually had a really terrific. I was up on the Central Coast. I just went for a drive there on Saturday afternoon, and I picked up from an Italian restaurant, like probably the best pizza that I'd had for a long time. So yeah, I prefer tasting different, sort of traditional sort of pizzas. But yeah, it's one of my favourite foods actually, pizza. So yeah.
It's the best. It's probably the only reason I've got a belly right now. Well, that and Tim Tams, but that's a recent addition.
Yeah.
Well, look, Nathan, thank you so much for your time, mate. We've already gone over, and Jack and I really appreciate you taking the time out, especially with your schedule the way it is with everything going on. If anyone wants to find out a bit more about you, they want to, find out a bit more about your philosophy, what you can do for them, all the rest of it, whereabouts can they find you, mate?
Yeah, I'll put all the stuff out there. Like, obviously, my business is B.Invested, so the letter B, word invested, so BINVESTED. You can look me up on YouTube, got the website, Facebook. I put a lot of content out there. One of the most interesting things I've been doing lately is I've created this feed, and it's called Birch Feed. And if any of your listeners want to get free access to it, like maybe just get them to email through to my offers, like pizza and property in the subject line, just at admin@binvested.com.au. I'll give them free access to Birch Feed. Normally it's $365 a year, and basically I look at all the data that I find on a daily basis. I just pop it out to this group of people and the community, and it's growing rapidly, especially at this point in time, just about whether it be about stocks, whether it be some videos of interesting stuff, whether it be in Australia or the US, UK, just stuff that I come across that I think could have value for someone to see and watch that's inside of Birch Feed, just to try and share that knowledge base, because we're in a new world. We're in a position where you can't trust what you're seeing on TV. It's really cool that you guys have got a podcast here to be able to share sort of contrarian views and different sort of people's perspectives on building property portfolios and whatnot. So yeah, like I share just random people's stuff in there. Happy to share, stuff wherever I feel that there's some really good content in there, and I'll definitely be putting this out to Birch Feed as well. So
brilliant. I'll put that email address in the show notes, and hopefully everyone can find it from there.
Fantastic. Well, is there any other sort of last parting words of wisdom that you wanted to impart on our listeners there, Nathan?
Maybe just a recap on a few things, because I know I went pretty deep beforehand. Maybe I'll think of a few things. So first one, having a solid plan, like knowing where you're traveling is crucial. It's like having a map, right? If you don't know how to get to the end destination, you're going to go off course and not even know that you're going off course. So having a clear direction of where you're going, as clear as possible, the better. Not everything's, programmed so clinically, but having clarity on where you're going is very important. Don't buy into, what you're reading out there, because we're not in the same place financially as what we're taught at school. Go researching, question things. If it doesn't make sense, ask questions, and don't be fearful of the current climate. Like, there's so many opportunities. Like, I'm so happy to be alive right now. Like, I turned 35 in 2 weeks' time, and you could have given me anything in the world, but you wouldn't have been able to give me something as great as the opportunities that we've got here right now. So don't let a good crisis go to waste. Understand that that there's more to play than just a property or your backyard out there in investing. There's a whole economic system at play. Think about how the banks work, and how things that would be detrimental would affect the banks. Like, they need to keep all their assets being the assets. People are the assets of the bank. Like, the property is an asset, and they're people to pay the mortgage of the assets. So they need to at this point, support those people. So that's where there's heaps of sort of forgiveness out there for debts and whatnot, and be careful of potential hyperinflation and nothing. The people will tell you in life, you can't do this, you can't do that. And life should be in a certain way, shape, or form. There's multiple different ways. Live life on your terms. Make sure that you're living your best life now, and that you're doing the things that you want to do. And the property for me has purely just been a vehicle to get me into a position where I've got lots of options in life. And that's what I sort of encourage people on that front to make sure that the properties are in line with their goals. And that's just from my thing. One last thing is 3 things from buying a property: buy it below market value if you have a time like now, and there is a bit of adversity out there. Buying it below market value gives you a buffer.
Yep.
Make sure there's upside for capital growth. You want to buy it in capital cities to see that growth, and make sure that it's sort of positive cash flows. So, all my properties that I buy are sort of neutral to positive cash flow to help support my lifestyle. And I can help people on building up their sort of strategies if they need to. Everybody's position is different, and the properties they acquire are different, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. I did one recently for $18,000, and all the way up to about $6.5 million this year. So it's definitely possible to still get in the market in 2020.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, very much so. Have a plan, be happy, challenge the status quo, and make sure you buy below market value with a good cash flow.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you guys as well for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome having you, Nathan. Really has.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, bud.
Oh, how was that, Todd?
That was awesome, as always. I know I always say everyone's awesome, but I've been looking forward to speaking with Nathan actually for like a decade. Yeah. So I'm a little bit secretly more excited than usual about this, about that, I should say.
Great bloke in here as well. Like he's a good guy.
Yeah, I am 100% going to have a pizza with that guy. Like that's when all this COVID stuff is over. Plane ticket done. Office Supreme Pizza. Well, not Supreme for me. He can have Supreme. I'm going to have a Veggie. But anyway, how about you, man? What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, probably the way he pushed through. Like he realized that obviously he got to property 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever it was in Sydney, and worked out that he had a lack of serviceability. But he kind of worked out that if he could purchase properties that had a positive cash flow in other areas, that would bring up his serviceability and allow him to kind of keep building the portfolio.
Balance it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the key that a lot of investors don't have, I think. That information, like a lot of people hit the ceiling and can't get past it.
Well, and I think that would come back to what he was saying before as well, as like the biggest mistake was those self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah, yep.
Like there must be so many people out there that get to property number 2 or 3, then the bank says no. And this is probably my biggest takeaway.
Yep.
Is just that never give up attitude.
Yeah.
They're like, well, just because you've said no doesn't mean it's actually a no. Let's keep asking until we actually get an answer that works.
Yeah, and then I guess in doing that, he's found out that if he could increase the serviceability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it reminds one of my favorite people is Diana Nyad. She's a swimmer. I don't know if I've ever talked about her before.
Yeah.
But I started researching her because when I did that big charity ride, I spoke with a few professional cyclists, and they all said, nah, impossible, not going to happen. I was like, okay, cool, thanks for your opinion. It doesn't mean anything now. And I just wanted to find someone or something that could give me that kind of, no, this is possible. And this woman, she tried to swim from Cuba to Florida. Right? If you've never heard of this woman, watch her on YouTube, how to swim from Cuba to Florida. Okay. She tried it in her 20s, failed miserably, then tried it again in her 50s, failed again for box jellyfish things. She's going to paralysis, then tried it again, almost got there. Didn't she? Almost drowned, just insanity, never gave up, ended up doing it. And I think she was 65 years old by the time she did it.
Jesus.
Swam from Cuba to Florida, something like 52 hours straight of swimming.
That's a lot for a 62-year-old.
It's a lot for anyone. But yeah, and especially for a 60-something-year-old, it's just insane. But the thing that I took away from that, and to come full circle on what I'm saying, because I know I've taken it way away from property investing, is just that never give up attitude. Everyone kept saying, Diana, you have to stop. This isn't physically possible. You can't actually do this. And it was just that, no, I'm going to find a way. Yep. And Nathan's had that exact same attitude. And I think if more of us really adopted the just because you say no, doesn't mean that's actually a no kind of attitude, we'd probably all get so much closer to where we actually want to be.
Yep.
But Yeah. Anyway, look, I really, really enjoyed that, mate.
Yeah, and probably as well, his points around the financial system and the hyperinflation. I mean, we've probably got to make the disclaimer that on this show, we kind of get a diverse range of guests on to kind of give us their opinions. We're not saying either one's right, but it's definitely interesting listening to what he says about it.
So interesting. And whether you think it's right, whether you think it's crazy, whatever you think, it's just about, I suppose, like you said as well, weighing up everything. And
making your own informed opinion, I
yeah,
guess.
Definitely. And so, yeah, we'll be really interested to hear what you guys think of this interview. So, like, chuck it in the comments if you're listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, whatever it is. If we're on YouTube, wherever you are, leave a comment on this one. Do you think it's a bit left of field? Do you reckon, no, this is really going to happen? Because I want to see what the public actually thinks on this one. Because personally, I think there might be some merit to this. But, yeah, I mean, the future will really tell us, won't it?
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. As always, like, share, subscribe, do what you do best, and have an amazing week.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.